North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not news, just my opinion. And then we debate. We debate that opinion. And oh, by the way, your opinion is just as valuable as mine, so why don't you share it? Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can also find us on a very, very cool chat room that's going on through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. It's really nice. You can jump on that chat room. As a matter of fact, let's see if anybody has so far. I always have the chat room derby, and today it's won by Elizabeth Ann. Hello, Elizabeth Ann. How you doing? Good to have you here. Thanks very much for joining us. So the news, analysis, commentary, and debate. Some business news leads the Wells Report today. Trading in shares of Twitter were halted after the stock spiked on reports that Elon Musk is going to go through with his Twitter deal. $44 billion worth. The news, based on anonymous sources, was first reported by Bloomberg News. Let me tell you about Bloomberg News. Okay. Bloomberg News. You'll note that when I come to this particular angle, it's because I'm opining. What I try to do is I try to use the medium of television to communicate with you so that you know that when I'm looking at this camera, I'm giving you my opinion. That way we can separate news and opinion, which no one else does. You know, it's like, it's ridiculous. These so-called journalists on television honestly believe that their opinion is news, and it's not, especially on this broadcast. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you about Bloomberg. Bloomberg is political, okay? Not like Politico or Even the Hill or National Review. Bloomberg is political as progressives are political, in my opinion. So I don't really consider it to be a credible news source. But what I've got here is because you know the editorial policy of the Wells Report is to always double source. I have double sources on this. Okay. And so this is credible information if Bloomberg News is not considered credible by me. Okay. So there's a little dichotomy there. There's more to the news business than you think. Just thought I'd share that with you. I have a real limit to my enthusiasm for the credibility of Bloomberg, but I'm assuming that this is correct because it's everywhere today, and it makes sense that it would actually be going through. Back to the news. So Musk offered to buy the San Francisco company at $54.20 a share. Shares jumped nearly 13% to $47.95 before trading stopped, of course. Of course, because if you have Twitter shares and you just spent $47.95, you're going to get a $5 a share pop on that. Actually, you're going to get a $7 a pop shot on that. A share. Hey, Odin. Shh. Be still. I'm broadcasting. You should see the look this dog is giving me. Shh. Be still. Back to business. According to the report today, Musk sent a letter to Twitter offering to complete the deal, which already has shareholder approval at the original price. Twitter did not immediately respond to messages for comment. They're not going to. They're going to be running to the bank. The trial seeking to compel Musk to buy Twitter is set to start in Delaware Chancery Court on October 17th. Apparently, that's kind of a notorious little court there. And so Musk is saying that he is just going to probably finish this and just make that court moot and just move forward. His argument for winning the case and walking away from the deal has largely rested on the allegation that Twitter misrepresented how it measures the magnitude of spam bot accounts that are useless to advertisers. They walk like an account, they talk like an account, they do things like an account, but they are not an account, they are just bots. Most legal experts believe he faced an uphill battle in convincing the Chancellor Kathleen St. Jude McCormick the Chancellery Court's head judge in Delaware, that something had changed since the April merger agreement that justified terminating the deal. All right, so that is coming to you from USA Today via Bloomberg. Let's go to Fox Business. Twitter shares soared today on a report that Elon Musk is proposing to acquire the social media giant for his original offer of $54.20 per share. They went up a bunch, boy. The company originally accepted Musk's $44 billion offer in April. However, the billionaire notified Twitter in July he was planning to terminate the deal after claiming the company breached its obligations by misrepresenting the number of spam and fake accounts on the platform. Twitter maintains the spam and fake accounts make up less than 5% of their total users. I got to be honest with you. I've used Twitter for a very, very long time. I am pretty sure that there's more than 5%. Maybe less than 10%, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 10 to 12%. Now, the thing about that is, as soon as Elon Musk gets the company, what he's going to be able to do is he's going to find out exactly how many of those spam accounts actually exist. And then what he's going to do is he's going to sue the owners of Twitter to get back his money. So this makes sense. And then that's what is probably the best thing. It's going to make lawyers a bunch of money, but then again, let's see, it's a $44 billion offer. I mean, even if Elon is able to net $2 billion of that back based on that and maybe some punitive damages to make it $3 billion, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, pretty soon you're talking about real money. In response, Twitter filed a lawsuit against Musk after he said he was going to cancel the deal, accusing him of refusing to honor his obligations. By the way, there was a $1 billion buyout if that kind of eventuality actually occurred. The deal he signed no longer serves his personal interests, is one of the reasons. Musk had since filed a countersuit, which was amended last month to include allegations from whistleblower and Twitter's former security chief, Pieter Mudge-Zatko. The news of Musk's latest proposal comes as the two parties have been gearing up for a very serious bout in court. The Delaware Court of Chancery, beginning October 17th, representatives from Musk and Twitter did not immediately return Fox Business requests for comment too soon. Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives called the proposal a smart move, but he added that it is a clear sign that Musk recognizes his chance of winning recognized his chances of winning in Delaware were unlikely. Being forced to do the deal after a long and ugly court battle in Delaware was not an ideal scenario, and instead accepting this path and moving forward with the deal will save a massive legal headache. This is according to Ives, writing a note to his clients. We see minimum regulatory risk in the deal, although now Musk owning Twitter will cause a firestorm of worries and questions looking ahead among users and the Beltway. And I have commentary on that. This is good news for people like you and me. And I'm going to explain why. As a matter of fact, I sort of kind of explained yesterday. If you missed that show, go back and get it. So here's the story. A Twitter news posting, a bulletin board, an international bulletin board of free speech, serves the interests of everyone if it is actually free speech. These people who thought that censoring people's commentary was the right thing to do really kind of moroned out. They really made a big mistake. You should have let them talk. You see, because now the Supreme Court of the United States is going to look at Section 230 of the 1996 Broadcasting Decency Law. And Section 230 made it possible for all of these social media companies to claim immunity for what somebody puts on their platforms. Well, since they started censoring that, somebody said, well, if you're going to censor that, then you don't need that protection, do you? And so now there's a chance that 230 could get swept away, which means that you will not have less censorship, you will have more censorship. Now, what I would suspect is that there would be cooler heads prevailing at some point, and somebody will say, hey, you know what? 230 is essential, because it is, especially if you want a free speech platform. And getting back to free speech, like I said, it works for everybody's advantage. Will there be things on there that are absolutely, completely, and totally inappropriate? Yes. Yes, there will be. And will people have to suffer through all that? Yes, they will, just like they did when the internet hit. Suddenly you had access to everything. Everything. And let me tell you, there were things there that you did not want to see because you can't get those pictures out of your head. And they're there forever. Is that going to happen with Twitter and all these other social media platforms? Yes. If they are uncensored. And they should be. I remember one of the most horrifying things that I ever reported regarding the People's Republic of China was how they were censoring the internet so their people would not have the information that was there. There's nothing more totalitarian and monstrous than that very act. The idea that Facebook and Twitter and all of these other social media platforms would actually base their censorship on politics raised the hair on the back of my spine, and it has not gone away. When I heard that Elon Musk was planning on grabbing Twitter, I said, great. And that points out something else that I've talked about on this radio broadcast, that indeed, the United States of America is a self-correcting mechanism. These San Francisco idiots at Twitter decided that they were going to play politics with their platform. It was disastrous for them. Musk realized he had a golden opportunity to grab a very, very lucrative business. And all he had to do was be in resonance with or a follower of the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States. That's all he has to do. And the rest will take care of itself. All this smut and garbage and all this stuff that we don't want to see, this pipeline of sewage that we have plugged into every house in the United States called the internet, well, it's sort of settled itself out. Yes, there are things that are now a part of American life that nobody would have ever thought of. Has that changed our society? Certainly it has. Oh, by the way, if you want to know what I'm talking about, do a Google search of the top 10 most accessed websites, and you will see exactly what I mean when I say our society has changed. So all I can say is this. In my view, Elon Musk moving forward with this deal is bigger than profit and loss. If he does this right, he'll make more money than he has now by far, just with this one business deal. And hopefully he will, because Elon Musk seems to be one hell of a United States citizen and an American. I like the guy a lot. I truly do. We shall see. Speaking of the markets, they're up dramatically. We'll talk a little bit about that as they close in on the close. You're watching the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. This is the news broadcast you should have had the entire time, and it just happens to happen in the middle of the day instead of at 6 o'clock every evening. And it happens to be 3 hours long instead of 30 minutes long because we go through the news. I do that every single day. I go through the news. It's like it averages between 25 and 30 news sources, both in the United States and overseas. I go looking for the stories that matter the most to us. I report them on this broadcast. We analyze them for fact and bias. We point that stuff out. And then we discuss what all that means. We do that every single day. If you find value in this show, please do share it with your friends. Please share it with your friends. Subscribe if you'd like. You can do that on any channel that you find us on. And we'd look forward to being able to interact with you. So thanks very much for being a part of this broadcast. And let's take a look at the markets. About an hour and give or take 40 minutes away from the close today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is hovering around 700. It's now at 709.61, according to CNBC. The Standard & Poor's up almost 100 points. NASDAQ up 320 and looking pretty good. The Russ 2K, and I don't know what that index is, but it's up 56.47 points, solidly in the green. Okay, so now the Dow Jones Industrial Average back over the 30,000 mark. And so we'll see. Now, most of that is bargain hunting. You know, if you take the long view and you say, okay, things are pretty solid economically, at least as far as the stock market goes. So there's no real reason for me to say not hang on to these stocks for a good opportunity that may come later. In other words, the investors, the short-term investors that are now looking at these stocks are saying, you know, for the short term at least, I'll be able to trade in these stocks and make some profit. And so remember, they bought all these stocks when they went down. And now that the prices are going back up, what they can do is they can sell them again, which will drop the price just a little bit. It's bargain hunting. And that pumping of stock is something that there are actually regulations against. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, so what you've got there is you've got an economy that is currently in transition. You know, it's going to be bumpy and lumpy for a while. We're going to see just like we're seeing. We see 500-point drops and 600-point gains and 700-point drops and 300-point gains and so on for a while now, because nobody knows exactly what's going on with the interest rates. Now, keep something in mind. The Fed is looking forward and saying maybe we don't need another 75 basis points increase in interest. So this next month they're going to take a look at it at the end of this month. So they may not do anything with the economy at all. Remember that it's like a wave. Okay, it's like a tsunami, if you will. In other words, as you have this very small earthquake, say for example, somewhere in a Pacific island, what happens is as you get these waves moving, they propagate and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's where tsunamis come from. Well, economies are an awful lot like that. You put a bump into the economy, and what happens is that the waves get bigger and bigger and bigger, just like a tsunami. Now, putting the interest rate increase that the Fed did is one of those little bumps that propagates throughout the entire economy. And they did it again, and they did it again. Now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to slow the economy down. In other words, inducing a recession in order to get rid of inflation. And you're saying, why would they do that? Well, as I told you before, inflation destroys economies. Recessions only damage them. So what do? What are your choices? Well, the choices are, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to stop harvesting American energy, and at the same time, we're going to drop $1.9 trillion into the economy. And that's how we got here. So pay very close attention. At least today's economic news from a market standpoint is good, and I thought I'd let you know. Coming up in just a couple of seconds, the FBI's at it again. I've got details in a second. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We make commentary, not the news. That's not the news. In other words, commentary is not news, it's opinion. Just like your opinion, just as valuable as your opinion. And we should debate. And that's what the chat room is for. A lot of people are doing the chat room. So we were just talking about Elon Musk. Speaking of the chat room, we were talking about Elon Musk. Looks like he's going to go through with the deal for Twitter, which is good for everyone. And if he does it right, and I hope he does. You know, one of these days, I just might float that guy a resume because he's doing a lot of things really, really right. And grabbing Twitter is a really good thing to do. All right. So what do we got going here? The chat room is talking a little bit about how there are some people that believe that censorship is here to stay. It is not. It absolutely is not. It's going to be absolutely universally rejected by the voters this time. I'm sure of it. There's another person who says that Musk better move forward to diversify because he believes that Tesla is going to go the way of all things because of battery problems, insofar as the raw materials for batteries in the current technical state require us doing business with our enemies again. Why we keep chasing technology that does that, it's happened so many times at this point, it's beginning to look like it's on purpose. And that takes me back to an American government that should be working to the benefit of Americans and not anybody else. Anyway, that's another discussion. I'm pretty sure that Tesla will be fine because I believe technology for batteries is going to improve dramatically. There are two things that need to happen. One, we have to come up with room temperature superconductors. You know, we're still sending electricity through copper. It's archaic. It's ancient. It's fossilized technology. And what we need to do is we need to find a better way of moving technology or moving energy, and we will. We're somewhere close to that at this particular moment. I would say anywhere between 5 and 10 years, and then we'll have a way to actually apply that technology somewhere 10 years from now. In the meantime, there's enough material to be able to do, as long as they don't go crazy with it. And it looks like they're trying to go crazy. But anyway, there's enough material to be able to make batteries that will be sufficient. Remember, the batteries don't die. The greatest source of all battery raw materials are old batteries. They do that with lead acid batteries. So they'll still be able to do that with these lithium batteries as well. Let's see. The Russell 2000 Index. Poker Monkey has come to my rescue. I did not know what the Russell 2000 was. It is a subset index of the Russell 3000, which tracks the 3,000 largest public companies with shares trading on the U.S. markets. Why, thank you, Poker Monkey. Thank you, my friend. And let's see. I've already moved on, but now I know because of you. See, this is one of the cool things about this show. It's a news broadcast where you can actually reach out and talk to the anchor. You can do it. So do it. Let's see what else. We've been in a recession since March, according to what I've read. Yeah, well, there are an awful lot of people that will agree with you. I mean, you know, whenever you spend $100 filling your gas tank, yeah, you're in a recession. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, food hasn't come down, et cetera, et cetera. There's no doubt about it. Poker Monkey moves on to say, liberalism ruins the economy, energy, foreign relations, race relations, border security, and on and on. Conservatism works every time it's tried. Completely and totally correct. Why is that? Because governments are intrinsically incompetent. You know, we're talking about all these moves the president made. He very likely could have said, for example, if he wants to move forward with a green energy agenda, he probably could have done what he did by saying, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to curtail U.S. production of energy. I mean, remember, we've been dealing with that philosophy since 1973, so it's not something that's new to us. Would gasoline have gone up? Yeah. Would it have gone up by double? No. So he could have done that. Or he could have tossed $1.9 trillion into the economy, and there would have been a little bit of inflation. not 8 points worth, but there would have been some inflation. But that's not what he did. What he did is he threw $1.9 trillion into the United States economy and cut energy production. I'm surprised that inflation is just 8.3% year to year. And I got to be honest with you, I expect it to go past double digits anytime now. What people don't understand, when they're saying that conservatism works every time it's tried. Yeah, well, Ronald Reagan, who's the first person in our lifetimes to actually show us this, he was an economist. He graduated from Iowa State or Iowa University, University of Iowa. He's an economist. He knew exactly what he was doing. Everybody thought he was some dumb cowboy actor. Wrong answer. He actually knew what he was doing. And then Trump, one of the best businessmen of our time, whether you think he's a crook or whether you think he's not a crook, whether you think he's a genius or whether you think he's a confidence man, the guy's been on top of American business for decades. And what did he do when he became the president? Same thing. On steroids. Same thing. Unemployment went to almost nothing. As a matter of fact, from a standpoint of actual function in the United States economy, it was nothing. There was no unemployment. Now, to a degree, that's still the case, but that's more of an accident than anything else. Just wait until all this stuff starts catching up. When you start seeing that, then you'll start seeing it's already happening. But you'll start seeing major corporations letting people go. Ford in this electric car revolution that they've gone all in on, they just cut 3,000 jobs. And there's more coming. And so when you start talking about, Joe Biden talking about these great union jobs, well, these great union jobs are going out the window because he wants to do something that car manufacturers are going to have to do, and they're going to have to cut costs to be able to invest the money necessary to tool up for this new age. So when you go through all of this stuff, it comes back to politics making stupid decisions. And the only way to stop government from making stupid decisions is to make it as small as humanly possible, which is that's the archetype of conservatism. Make the government as small as possible, because that way the incompetence-based mistakes they make only do this much damage instead of this much damage. You see the way that works? Al Gore famously said the United States government shouldn't be something so small that you can drown in a bathtub. Oh, yes, it should be. It absolutely should be. Hell, the U.S. government can't do what the Constitution says it's supposed to do. There is no excuse except for the fact that politicians are in charge. And that doesn't mean just politicians in the legislative branch. I'm talking about the politicians in the judicial branch. Somebody should have brought a lawsuit against the United States government for leaving the borders open years and years and years ago. It's a lead pipe cinch, open and shut case. Okay, you look at the Constitution, you say, it's supposed to maintain secure borders. That's what the federal government's job is. And look at what we have here. Are you seeing my point? The prosecution rests. And nobody's done it. And nobody's done it because we keep electing the wrong people. And that takes us back to a smaller government. Now, I have not seen a Democrat, except maybe Bill Clinton, that had the basic understanding glimmer of what economics was all about. Now, when I started doing this show 22 years ago, okay, I didn't know anything about economics either. So I had to study and read and read and study and study and read and read and study. And after a while, you begin to realize just exactly how this works, at least on a simplistic small scale. I mean, you can get as deep into economics as you want to. The permutations alone, it's like a 50-sided Rubik's Cube. Because you can do this and that and such and so, and you understand all the basic laws of economics, and then you start talking about the regulations involved and all the permutations that sends through an economy, which, by the way, is something that Ronald Reagan cut when he became the president of the United States, and Donald Trump did again to make that a simpler game. Because when you make things simple on a federal government level, what do you actually accomplish? When you create a government that is easily understood, what do you accomplish? Let me look at the chat room, see if anybody's answered that. Nobody's answered it yet. Okay. Here's what you accomplish. When you make things simple, when you reduce things to the simplest possible form, what you do is you render societal elites moot. When things are so complicated you can't figure them out, well, there will be people that will figure them out, and they will become the elite, like Bill Gates. Bill Gates did not invent anything. Bill Gates figured out how to make a computer small enough to fit on your desk instead of small enough to fit in one room of your house. That's all he did. And now he's trying to tell people how to feed the world. What the hell is he doing? He has no idea what he's talking about. He has no idea what he's talking about. But these arcane power structures, these odd little clubs and agendas within agendas and manipulations within manipulations require complexity, and that requires elites. If you get rid of the complexity, guess what you get rid of? The elites. Let me give you another example. While we're on the subject of conservatism, which is not what I was planning on talking about at this particular moment, but that's okay because I can talk about the buffoonery of the FBI at the beginning of the next hour of this podcast. And I hope you watch it. Okay? I'll give you another example of why conservatism is important and why it should be something that we pursue at all possible costs. The IRS. The IRS. I'm a smart guy. I have a computer. I can get TurboTax. I got TurboTax. I sat down with it. I said, by golly, I'm going to be able to do this. And I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. I couldn't. So I ended up doing what I always do, which is take my taxes to somebody who knows what they're doing. And so I said to myself, why are we doing this? I mean, fundamentally, it's very, very simple. Send us a portion of what you make every year. Okay. So how should that work? Back to the books, back to studying, back to all of this. I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to? And I realized something that's been kicking around forever and ever and ever, the flat tax, a flat tax system that's regressive. The flat tax system that says if you make less than $150,000 a year, you pay 15%. Make $150,000 to $250,000 a year, you pay 12%. And on and on and on. You make $250,000 to $500,000, you pay 10%. You make $500,000 and up, you pay 10%. Or no, you pay 10%. And that's that. Think about that for just a couple of seconds. And then, of course, you take away all the gunk in the tax code. Not all of it, but the really gunky parts. Like, for example, why are we paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for houses that cost $50,000 to $60,000 to build? Why are we doing that? Why is it that I can spend $250,000 on a house like this that's made out of just basically framing, sticks, drywall, asphalt shingles, a brick veneer, so on and so on and so on? And I could pay $250,000 in Florida for a house this very size, that's built with concrete block filled with concrete. Same price for the house. Why is that? Well, because most people can't live in two places at once and can't say, wait a minute, why is this house so much better than the one I've got in Texas? What's that all about? You think that's bad? In Las Vegas, the building system is framing, chipper board, chicken wire, and stucco. That's the whole thing. Houses look beautiful when they're new. And they age. They age like an old man. You know, where your nose gets bigger and your ears get bigger and your skin begins to sag. Well, just look at me. Just look at me. That's it. That's what those houses look like after 10 or 15 years. So anyway, we get a tax write-off if we buy a house. Well, get rid of it. That'll take $50,000 off the price of every house in America instantly. And as time settles out, it'll be even more. Because houses aren't anything that you're buying to live in. They're a tax dodge for the middle class. And you're saying, my God, people won't be able to afford houses. Of course they will. Remember, they're only $50,000 to build. If you're making $100,000 a house, you're still selling your house for $150,000. And you're still making $100,000. Come on. It's okay. But anyway, what happens is you make it simple enough so that you can do your taxes sitting at your table in about 20 minutes. Done. And that needs to go through the entire government of the United States. And that's what needs to happen. All of this political gunk that junks up American law. The criminal code. All of these decisions. Like, if you drive down the road and your blood alcohol is more than 0.08%, you are going to get a ticket for DUI. Unless you're Paul Pelosi, or unless you're an illegal immigrant, or blah, 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 blah. You get rid of all that stuff. You get caught with a 0.08, you get your ticket. No matter who you are. No matter who you are. How many Americans would be alive today if it wasn't for the fact that illegal aliens driving drunk in the United States are killing us? How many? 10,000? In the last 20 years, 10,000? Maybe more? That's a ballpark figure. Would this country be better off with 10,000 people not killed by illegal aliens driving cars drunk? Yes. Yes, it would. But we don't do that. Why? Well, because we're trying to curry political favor. Why are we doing that? Well, because once again, we get right back to electing the wrong people. The people that don't know anything about the economy. The people that don't want to make it simple so people can understand, so that there really is no need for elites. This is where we are in our country. Now, we're not the first country that had to go back through all that, okay? We're not the first country that had to do that. We're not the first republic that's ever had to suffer this. But we can maintain this republic as something worth living in if we start doing it properly, and that means we're going to have to stop electing people who want to manufacture whatever they have to be able to have a political issue to fight that means nothing to most people. I'll give you an example of that. Here's an example of that. Transgenderism. Okay, how many people in the United States actually suffer from gender dysphoria? A tiny little bitty teeny weeny percentage. Should those people be able to have a decent life? Sure they should. Absolutely. You know, you want a great example of that? Caitlyn Jenner. She used to be Bruce Jenner. Now she's Caitlyn Jenner. She's having a wonderful life. She's doing just fine. Okay, go. Do whatever you want to, as long as you're 18 and making your own decisions. The same teachers that were diagnosing ADHD and putting kids on Ritalin, mostly boys, are now diagnosing gender dysphoria. And we're mangling our kids. It wasn't too long ago that we were sitting around and talking about genital mutilation and how backward and ridiculous it was and how silly and stupid that was, and only savages would do this to their women. Guess what we're doing to our women? We're turning them into synthetic men. That requires genital mutilation, and vice versa. And like I said, we're talking about a very small, minuscule portion of our society that deserves to have the same opportunity everybody else has, a great life, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. What I'm saying is that the people that we keep electing are inflicting their idiocy and delirium on the entire society. And for what? A transitory political advantage in the next election and nothing more. Nothing more. An opportunity to send a whole bunch of money to their political contributors and maybe get a kickback or two. I'm not saying that the Biden crime family has been doing any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I shy away from the term Biden crime family because I haven't seen them commit any crimes yet. Oh, I've heard plenty that they're committing crimes. Okay, so let's get them into court and let's find that out. See, again, it's simple. If that's the case, somebody needs to look into it for real. And by the way, we have a story on that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on here on the Wells Report. I just realized something that my show computer has somewhat crashed, I believe. Yeah, let me see what's going on here. Hello, computer. No, it's dead. Oh, good. So anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a break. I'm going to try to get my computer working again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that you're listening to the Wells Report, and we'll be back in just a couple of moments. But did you get what I'm talking about here? Do you understand what I'm saying? We need 435 Jim Jordans in the house. Well, maybe. But you know what? I've learned, especially doing this show, learned by doing this show and listening to you guys. What I have learned is that my particular ideology is better when it's combined, discussed, debated with somebody else's political ideology. We come up with a better solution. Two heads are better than one. But what we have to do is we have to cut the number of decisions we're making at a federal level. At a federal level, we've got to get this federal government down to the size it's supposed to be, not the size it is. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to this broadcast, and I've got like a technical little issue here that I'm going to fix, and I will do that in just a couple of minutes. I'll be back, as a matter of fact, in 4 minutes on the Wells Report. And greetings once again. This is the Wells Report. Hi, I'm John David Wells, and we're enmeshed in a small little technical difficulty. You see, let me explain what's going on. I have a computer over here that plays all the music and runs the show and so on and so forth. It sits right over there. And what it did is it froze. Okay. And so when you hear the music and so on and so forth, it's coming from that computer. All right. This computer right in front of me runs the television show that gives me the opportunity to go over here and go over here and go over here and do that and so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. See? And then there's this computer right there, which is all the stuff that I give to you from a news standpoint. So I got 3 computers that I have to deal with. All right. Now, if you've dealt with one computer, you know that occasionally it gets a wild hair up its and decides that I don't have a dumb button. I did that myself. That it decides that for whatever reason, it needs to, take a break. And so that's what happened with the show running computer. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to take a break in 20 seconds and take another break. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with the next hour of the Wells Report. So stay where you are. Stay where you are. It will be wonderful and so on and so on. And I shall return in just a couple of moments on most of this same streaming station. See you in a minute. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. If you were with us last hour, you realized that we had a pretty serious technical little glitch there as the computer that runs the show plays the commercial music that you're playing right now. By the way, that's It's not anybody's music. It's commercial. It's commercial grade music that we pay for, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, if you were here, the computer that played all that stuff just decided to take the rest of the afternoon off. So I had a small conversation with it in the HR office, and we obviously have it working again. See, that's the way that works. Yeah. I promised to, if it didn't start working, I was going to bite it. See, that's a computer pun. This is the Wells Report. What we do is we bring you the news. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, which is not the news. It's not, no, I didn't use the wrong pronouns with my computer, okay? Anyway, so somebody on the chat room. Anyway, what I do is I make commentary. That's not the news, but it is the basis of debate. So is the news, and so is the facts and the bias, and so on and so on. We debate all of that stuff. This is an interactive news broadcast. And that is what we're going to be doing today on the show. As a matter of fact, we have some breaking news here. It's breaking so much that there's only one source for it, and that's CNN. Former President Donald Trump has asked the Supreme Court of the United States to intervene in the dispute over materials seized by the FBI from his Mar-a-Lago estate this summer. His emergency request with the Supreme Court is the latest example. Now, this is bias here. This is where I point out bias. Listen to the bias and the acid and the vitriol that is dripping in this paragraph, okay? So here's the news. Former President Donald Trump has asked the Supreme Court to intervene in the dispute over materials the FBI seized from Mar-a-Lago this summer. Perfect. Perfect journalism. And now this is where it becomes propaganda and really annoys me. Paragraph 2, same story, CNN. His emergency request with the Supreme Court is the latest example of the former president seeking to involve the justices in investigations that entangle him at a time when the high court's legitimacy in politically explosive cases is under intense scrutiny. Let me point a couple of things out with this particular paragraph. It drives me up the frickin' wall. The President of the United States has been investigated unfairly, probably illegally, during the entire time that he has been on the national stage, and certainly as he's been the president. The FBI, the DOJ, CIA, NSA, the Office of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security, the IRS, the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, the FEC, the Federal Elections Commission, have all come after this guy. That doesn't count state sources. Currently, an attorney general in the state of New York that can't prove a criminal case is trying to sue Donald Trump in civil court. That's not what attorneys general do. They just don't do that. And so what happens is that all these institutions that are supposed to be following the Constitution are now following politics. And the real problem with Donald Trump isn't Donald Trump. The real problem with Donald Trump is he has exposed all of this. And because this I'm discussing is run by people that are not real smart, they've played right into the trap that he set. The FBI it's going to take 20 years for the FBI to recover. The DOJ is a laughing stock. The Department of Homeland Security has proved that it is valueless. CIA is, well, CIA often does things that get them into political trouble. Okay, that's kind of the way that's part and parcel of what they do, okay? This is the first time they've ever run CIA operations in the United States, however, and that's thanks to the Patriot Act. And so when you're President Trump and you've got all of this gross misconduct going around you under the guise, it's oppression under color of office. That is the technical term for what Donald Trump has been suffering. It is oppression under color of office. There's only one place to go. When you can't go to the DOJ and get equal enforcement of law, equal protection under the law, when you can't go to the FBI and get a straight investigation, when you can't do any of these things, where do you go? You have to go to the highest court in the land. And the highest court in the land is going to have to decide some of this stuff. Here's what they have to decide. They have to decide, A, what are the limits of presidential executive privilege? 2, they have to reaffirm attorney-client privilege. Both of these things work to Donald Trump's advantage. The idea that the FBI could come and seize evidence legally, they did that legally. They will seize evidence, turn it over to a DOJ that is absolutely biased, and then go through all those materials that include attorney-client privilege, violates attorney-client privilege. That they go through all of these things that are presidential executive privilege. It violates all those. And meantime, the idea that someone who wants to prosecute you has evidence that they are not supposed to have based on presidential executive privilege and attorney-client privilege, it violates the entire concepts of either of those. And the Supreme Court is going to say, yep, it violates that. No, you can't continue this. You know, these paper-thin assertions that say, well, these are all papers that belong to the people of the United States. Well, no. Traditionally, that has never been the case. There are presidents who have their presidential papers. Jimmy Carter has them. Bill Clinton has them. Barack Obama has them. Everybody has them. That's what presidential libraries are all about. George W. Bush has them. That's what presidential libraries are for. And it doesn't take a whole lot to say, okay, so Donald Trump's not stupid. And after being investigated for the last 3 decades that I'm aware of, 30 years, he's probably not a crook. So why would the DOJ, proven to be political, proven to be biased, through the auspices of the FBI, proven to be political, proven to be biased, why would they go to Mar-a-Lago and grab all those papers when everybody knows that there's always a food fight between ex-presidents and the National Archives to get their papers back and get them all figured out and blah, 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 blah. It's always been done. It's always been this way. Why are they doing that? Well, because President Trump has papers they don't want him to have. What would those be about? Well, they could be things about the Mueller investigation that wouldn't necessarily make the people who did the Mueller investigation look too good. As a matter of fact, it might be criminal. Former CIA Director John Brennan, are you listening? He's just one of them. And all these people, well, they belong to something called the deep state. And when the deep state gets so powerful, ably assisted by the mainstream media, there's only one place to go. And that is the Supreme Court of the United States. And hopefully, the Supreme Court of the United States will see things the way I just explained to you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to interfere with anything the FBI and DOJ are doing with Donald Trump. Not trying to interfere with any of it. What I am trying to say is, you're going to stop doing all of this. If I'm a Supreme Court justice, you're going to stop doing all of this. The FBI, stop immediately what you're doing. Special master, this is a guy we know, with the supervision of Judge Eileen O'Connor. She's a federal judge. You guys work this out. You work through all these papers. You guys figure this stuff out. Meanwhile, FBI, you'll have to stop. You'll get the papers that belong to you, and the clock starts over. You do not get to see information that does not belong to you. And they'll find under the Fifth and Sixth Amendments of the Constitution of the United States in President Trump's favor. They have to. And if they don't, then we've learned something about our country. We've learned that the left has absolutely been successful in getting rid of not just the First Amendment, but now they've gotten rid of the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. And that the deep state goes a hell of a lot deeper than we think, all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. All because these people overplayed their hand with somebody the people of the United States elected to be the president. Someone who was the absolute worst nightmare of the American left. That's a guy who, by virtue of the fact that he's been under investigation for 30 years, has not been found guilty of anything, and probably won't be found guilty of anything, is lifting up the skirts of a very, very ugly woman named Deep State. How long have they been running our country? Well, long enough to say, well, Chuck Schumer said, well, you don't ever mess with the intelligence agencies. They get 6 different ways from Sunday to get you back. That's how long the deep state's been in operation. How many people do you know that's gotten in federal law trouble with federal law? Mike Flynn, you've read about him in the newspapers. How many of those guys are ruined, destroyed in federal pokey because they were on the wrong side of a political decision made by the FBI? The answer is too many. And how are you going to prove it, Wells? My God, how do you prove all this stuff? You're just spewing, aren't you? You know what separates me from just about anybody else that does this job? One, politics has annoyed me so much, I don't really care whose political ox gets gored. In our current political situation, nobody represents the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And in this current world of propaganda disguised as news, nobody reports the damn news. Guess what I do? I report the news. I defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And since I don't care about politics one way or another, the bias is American, not Republican or Democrat, not conservative or progressive. That's why you should watch this broadcast. It's called The Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Okay, now that we've gotten through the breaking news, let me see if there's anything more. Breaking. Okay, here is more from the Washington Examiner. Okay, so let me see if I can find that. It was just here a moment ago. Okay, this is the New York Times. Let's see. Trump asked Supreme Court to intervene in review of Mar-a-Lago records. In earlier cases, the justices have ruled against Mr. Trump when he sought to shield his financial and presidential records from prosecutors and congressional investigators. This is the New York Times conflating apples and oranges. Former President Donald J. Trump asked the Supreme Court today to bar the Justice Department from reviewing documents marked as classified the FBI removed from his Florida estate, saying that an appeals court lacked jurisdiction to rule on the matter. And that is probably indeed true. Although the Supreme Court is dominated by 6 conservative justices, 3 of them appointed by Mr. Trump, it has rejected earlier efforts to block the disclosure of information about him. And legal experts say Mr. Trump's new emergency application faces significant challenges. Everything that goes to the Supreme Court faces significant challenges. This is biased. This is propaganda. Okay, this is more propaganda. Let me go to the Washington Examiner. It's propaganda the other way, and you can decide what's what. Let's see. Let me get out of that. Let me get over here. Okay, here. See how I'm wielding this technology. The mighty technology of my iPhone 13 Pro. See how I'm going through this? Right, here we go. Lawyers for former President Donald Trump called upon the Supreme Court to reverse an appeals court ruling, which had in itself reversed a lower court ruling, which allowed a special master to review allegedly classified documents seized at Mar-a-Lago. They've already made a mistake here. What they left out there. The lower court ruling allowed the FBI to continue their perusal of the documents. Okay, which is something that the original federal court judge set aside because there are circumstances regarding attorney-client privilege. And the FBI does not get to peruse documents that are protected by attorney-client privilege, which is why there is a special master in the first place. Okay? Last month, an appeals court panel for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. By the way, on that panel, 2 of them were Trump appointees. All right? Just keep that in mind. They requested a partial stay of a lower court order, which allowed the DOJ to continue its criminal investigation using roughly 100 allegedly classified documents the FBI seized from Trump's Florida resort home. Trump wants the Supreme Court to intervene. The 11th Circuit lacked. Now listen to this. These are the comments from Trump's lawyers. The 11th Circuit lacked jurisdiction to review, much less stay, an interlocutory order of the district court providing for the special master to review materials seized from President Trump's home, including approximately 103 documents from the government that the government contends bear classification markings. Trump's lawyers told the Supreme Court today the application seeks to vacate only the portion of the 11th Circuit stay order, limiting the scope of the special master's review of the documents bearing classification markings. The 3-judge panel's decision last month was a win for the DOJ, with the appeals court reversing Judge Eileen Cannon's determination. The DOJ would have to provide seized documents with classified markings to the special master, Judge Raymond Dearie, for independent review. The unprecedented circumstances presented by the case, an investigation of the 45th president of the United States by the administration of his political rival and successor, compelled the district court to acknowledge the significant need for enhanced vigilance and to order the appointment of a special master to ensure fairness. Okay, that's commentary from Trump's lawyers. It's very, very good. I wonder exactly how this is going to go. Frankly, with what I know, I cannot see the Supreme Court turning this aside. But once again, if they do, we'll all learn something, won't we? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. If you find value in this broadcast, please do me a favor. Please subscribe to it. Send it to your friends. Hit the like button. Watch it every day. We'd like to build this into something that helps me make a living, because right now that's not happening. But if you would like to put your money where my mouth is, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. Patreon.com/The Wells Report. You can sign up for $1 a month. That's all there is. That's all you have to do. $1 a month is fine. Okay? Seriously? If everybody that's listened to this broadcast, say in the last 5 years, gave me $1 a month, I'd be fine. Believe me, I'd do just fine. So do me a favor. If you think this show's worth something, even $1 a month, that's fine. Go to patreon.com/The Wells Report and support this broadcast. Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate it. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time talking about what I wanted to talk about before Donald Trump has petitioned the Supreme Court of the United States to stop the DOJ from going through what is very likely his personal business, as in attorney-client privilege and presidential executive privilege. Okay? So this, unfortunately, takes us right back to the FBI and the aforementioned deep state that we were just talking about. Yesterday, this article came out. It was everywhere. I'm currently using the one from Kevin Johnson from USA Today. Federal authorities have identified no credible threats to U.S. election systems, despite persistent efforts by foreign adversaries, including Russia, to amplify disinformation about voter fraud and election integrity. This, according to senior FBI officials. A month before the anticipated midterm vote, the officials said they were closely monitoring potential threats to election workers in the U.S. after local officers reported a wave of harassment and abuse before and after the contentious 2020 presidential election. On and on and on. So the FBI says, hey, do not worry about it. There are no credible threats to U.S. election systems in the 2022 election. The FBI. There you go. That was yesterday. Okay? Out of the same newspaper, being written by Eric Tucker and Noman Merchant through the auspices of the Associated Press, federal officials are warning ahead of the November elections that Russia is working to amplify doubts about the integrity of U.S. elections, while China is interested in undermining American politicians it perceives as threats to Beijing's interests. Wait a minute. Okay, let me go back. Let me go back to the one that we just heard from yesterday. Federal authorities have identified no credible threats to U.S. election systems despite persistent efforts by foreign adversaries, including Russia and China, to amplify disinformation about voter fraud and hinder politicians that they don't agree with. Fast forward to today. Federal officials are warning ahead of the November elections that Russia is working to amplify doubts about the integrity of U.S. elections, while China is interested in undermining American politicians it perceives as threats to Beijing's interests. Now, let me tell you something about these two articles. Article number 1 names the FBI as the source. Article number 2 cites federal officials. Who could that be? They don't say. Is it the Office of National Intelligence? We don't know. Is it the Director of National Intelligence? We don't know. Is it the Department of Homeland Security? You think they would be the source of this? We don't know. According to this article. Remember what I told you about propaganda? Propaganda is the science of leaving stuff out and then drawing a conclusion based on the fact that you've left some things out. You see, if you put a fact into a story, you have to be able to defend it. If you leave it out, you don't have to defend it. That's the difference between news and propaganda. If you're new to the Wells Report and you say, okay, but what the hell? If you're new to the Wells Report and you don't think you're going to stick around, fine, but take that one with you. The difference between news and propaganda. Propaganda is the science of leaving facts out. News, on the other hand, is the science of putting facts in. That's why news should be factual instead of opinionated. Yes, I put my opinion out there. I do. But I tell you when I do it. As a matter of fact, I look at this camera when I do it. When I'm reporting the news, I look at this one. So back to the news. Federal officials are warning ahead of the November elections. Russia is working to amplify doubts. China is interested in undermining American politicians ahead of the 2022 election. An unclassified intelligence advisory newly obtained by the Associated Press says China is probably seeking to influence select races, electoral races, to, quote, hinder candidates perceived to be particularly adversarial to Beijing, unquote. In the advisory sent to state and local officials in mid-September, intelligence officials said they believe Beijing sees a lower risk in molding the midterms versus a presidential election. That's because not many people are paying attention. While officials said they have not identified any credible threats to election infrastructure in the U.S., the latest intelligence warning comes amid the peak of midterm campaigning, in which a rising number of candidates and voters openly express a lack of confidence in the national democratic processes. You see, there are a couple of things in here that I've just reported to you. One of them is that they're not concerned about election security because there have not been any credible threats to election workers like there were before and after the 2020 election. Right? And you know what? You don't have those if the election is understandable and makes sense to people. You only have problems like that when it doesn't make sense to people. When there are certain things that are not explained easily. Like, for example, Joe Biden getting 81 million votes when his old boss got 67 million the first time and 65 million the second time. Joe Biden gets 81 million votes? Really? Huh. That's interesting. But what they're doing here is they're also doing a little bit of cleanup work. I need to be over here. They're doing a little bit of cleanup work, right? Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to blame any kind of lack of confidence among American voters, not on what happened here in the United States during the 2020 election, but the evil Russia and the evil China. They're trying to shift blame. And we'll, by the way, talk more about that in just a couple of seconds, okay? So, back to the news. Officials have not said that they've identified any credible threats. The latest intelligence warning comes amid the peak of midterm campaigning, et cetera, et cetera. They shouldn't be involved in this whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. If there's a problem, they should be watching it. But for some reason, somebody in the intelligence agencies, the deep state that I keep referring to, they just can't resist playing politics. They just can't resist it. And so what they're doing is leaking. Foreign countries have long sought to sway public opinion in America, perhaps most notably in a covert Russian campaign that used social media to sow discord on hot-button social issues ahead of the 2016 presidential election. And everybody knows, by the way, everybody knows that Twitter is absolutely the go-to source for real information about the 2016 election. So stupid. Just so silly. Anyway, on and on and on. Okay, caveat emptor. Okay, let the buyer beware. The news in this nation is so screwed up, you don't have any idea what to believe. I literally spend my entire day sifting through this collection of garbage described as disguised as journalism, and try to pluck the facts out of it, and then try to tell you what the facts actually tell you. The rest of this is just gobbledygook. It's just gobbledygook. Who, what, when, where, why, how. That's journalism. That's the first draft of history. Foreign countries have long sought to sway public opinion in America, perhaps most notably a covert Russian campaign that used social media. Now, that actually did happen, okay? But they don't know. The person who wrote this, the people who wrote this have no idea what the effects of that particular campaign was or were. Nobody does. Because they didn't do an in-depth research study. And then once again, when all the research studies that we've heard for the last 20 years are all politically warped, what good is a research project? What these people have done is they've created this perfect storm of pure D gobbledygookian claptrap. And I do that, literally, I do this every day. I go through this news. Yeah, Alicia says garbage media. Correct. Garbage in, garbage out. And I spend my whole day trying to bring the news out of it. You know what it's like? You remember when you were in high school, did you ever hear about muckrakers? There was a period of journalism in Europe that had to do with the very ugly idea that people would go to a riverbank and try to scrape little pieces of treasure out of it. It's like that was their version of people with metal detectors at the beach. And what they do is they'd rake muck. And what they do is journalistically in Europe, they would go to the lowest possible, most salacious, most sensationalist garbage and report that. That's not what's happening here, actually. What's happening here is that people have generated, instead of actual honest-to-goodness muck on a river's edge, they've actually created synthetic muck. And they keep going back through this synthetic muck to create points out of nothingness except garbage. Political garbage. Somebody said something about something, and because of that something or other, that loose talk, that totally worthless piece of information, we can now surmise that this person is guilty of this. And that's American news. I just described it to you. And it gets worse every year. It gets worse with every election. And strangely enough, the only people that are actually trying to do something about it are the new owners of Politico and the new CEO of CNN. Those are the only people that are doing anything to try to fix this mess. Well, except yours truly. But you got a complete analysis of what I've been doing for the last 22 years, which is going through all this garbage and trying to bring you a newscast. And oh, by the way, point out the deep state like the FBI. And what are you saying? Well, now, wait a minute. What did you say? What? Well, wait until you hear what I'm about to tell you regarding the FBI. And you want to talk about bad intelligence. You want to talk about misconduct in dealing with public information. It takes us right back to the deep state and the FBI and them playing politics. When I saw this, man, you could hear the face palm in the next house next to me. The slap was so loud. I went, God, these guys. So you have a government completely out of control from a standpoint of reality, trampling the Constitution at every turn. You have the federal judiciary using federal law as political tools. You have a federal law enforcement agency that is not interested in actually solving crime. They are interested in creating crimes to pin on political adversaries of the people they work for. And on top of all of it is a mainstream media that apologizes for all of this unconstitutional misconduct. Absolutely biased. And I know exactly one guy that tries to untangle it every single day. One. It's me. I never thought I'd be doing this. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Join us at your leisure. Join us in the chat room. It's hopping today. Join us in the chat room. You can find that on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. All right. So I was talking to you about the FBI. The FBI is going through an incredibly bad patch. I've never seen the FBI in worse shape. And that, by the way, is not just my assessment. That's the same assessment I get from all of my friends who used to be FBI agents. One of them actually asked me this question. JD, what happened to my FBI? Well, you left. That's what happened. The people that knew how the FBI was supposed to operate left. Probably because the people running the FBI, that decided to play politics with the world's greatest, or formerly the world's greatest, law enforcement agency. They wanted to play politics. They got rid of all you guys. And what they got is this political playground that the left now wants to inflict on everybody in the United States. The left meaning leftist politicians, progressive campaign donors, George Soros, and a mainstream media that is of that identical ilk. Check this out. The latest FBI boobery. A new report from the Crime Prevention Research Center, the CPRC, argues the FBI's data contains massive errors when tracking active shooting incidents, undercounting how often armed citizens have thwarted active shooting situations over the last 8 years. A new report from the Crime Prevention Research Center argues the FBI's data contains massive errors when tracking active shooting incidents, undercounting how often armed citizens have thwarted active shooting situations over the last 8 years. Why does that matter? Because whenever anybody quotes crime statistics from you or to you, they're from the FBI 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10, they use FBI data regarding crime. Remember the garbage in, garbage out, deep state thing I was just talking about? Although collecting such data is fraught with challenges, some see a pattern of distortion in the FBI numbers because the errors almost exclusively go one way, minimizing life-saving actions of armed citizens. The report, which was provided to Fox News this week by Crime Prevention Research Center founder and president John Lott, states, data released by the nonprofit shows that 34.4% of active shootings were thwarted by armed citizens between 2014 and 2021. FBI data shows only 4.4% of active shootings thwarted by armed citizens during the same time period. In all, 360 active shooter incidents were identified by CPRC between 2014 and 2021. 124 of them were stopped by armed citizens. The FBI identified 252 active shooter incidents during the same time period, with only 11 thwarted by armed citizens. All this data is available at Fox News. Whether deliberately through bias or plain incompetence, here we go again. Now we're being expected to choose between whether the FBI is incompetent or whether the FBI is playing politics and being malevolent in so doing. We have to choose between incompetence or possible malevolence. Again. By the way, if you're new to the broadcast, this comes up over and over and over again. Great example, Hillary Clinton's open server accessed by foreign intelligence officers. James Comey stood up in front of the entire nation and said, she's just incompetent. She had no intention to violate what we're now trying to stomp President Trump into the dirt for. See? See what I mean? FBI is right in the center of all of it, and they're doing it again, this time with us. So the report points to two variables cause discrepancies between the FBI data and the group's research: misclassified shootings and overlooked incidents. The research argues the FBI miscalculated at least 5 cases, including 2 cases where citizens with valid firearms licenses thwarted a shooting, but the citizens were not listed in the report because police ultimately apprehended the suspects. The other 3 misidentified cases include one where the FBI simply failed to mention citizen engagement at all, and 2 others that categorized armed civilians as armed security members. The discrepancies are also reflected in the FBI apparent oversight in not including 25 cases that would likely have been mass shootings and thwarted by armed citizens, according to the report. That is in addition to another 83 active shooting incidents that were not detailed in FBI data. What did I tell you about propaganda? Well, the FBI says, the good guy with the gun thing is only 4.4% of these things. But, well, actually, it's 34.4% if this data from CPRC is correct. Propaganda is the science of leaving facts out. They left facts out. They left facts out because of incompetence or because they're playing politics. Which do you think is true? That's the debate part of the Wells Report. Back with hour number 3 in just a moment. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. This is the Wells Report. So anyway, I hit that too soon. God bless. I'll be back in about 6 minutes. Hi. What happened? Okay. Well, that's weird. Did I hit the wrong one? I must have. Yeah, we had a small little problem here. Here we go. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. I must have hit the wrong cool little thingamabob that I use when I'm putting a break up. So it was a little short. So if you have been standing there staring at my chair going, where'd Wells go? Well, I went downstairs and took some Motrin. I walked 6 miles earlier today, and my butt is sore. I know, too much information. This is the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We then make commentary. Commentary is my opinion. It is not the news, and I differentiate between commentary and news. I do, because you don't need to be clogged up with my opinion when I'm giving you the news. That being said, we do indeed provide you with the news. Okay? So that being said, after we do that, we make commentary. That's my opinion, just as valuable as yours. Share yours, and that's the debate part. So it's news, analysis, commentary, and debate. We do 3 hours every single day. 3 separate podcasts will be coming soon. We're not there yet, so there you go. Yes, Arthur. Yes, I also went to the restroom. Thank you. Talk about TMI. There is a chat room, by the way, which is what I refer to on this broadcast an awful lot. You can also call us on the telephone, 817-379-2172. I don't know what our presidential administration is trying to accomplish. I don't. Let me go back to the other camera because that's the opinion camera. I don't know what the Biden administration is trying to accomplish. No, I'm not butthurt from a standpoint of being liberal, butthurt from physical use of my buttocks. I'm sore. I've been working out. I'm old. Move on. I don't know what the Biden administration is trying to accomplish. And so what I have to do is I have to try to figure out what they're trying to accomplish. In order to figure out what they're trying to accomplish, I have to figure out just exactly what the Biden administration actually is, how it's constructed, how it makes its decisions. Yeah. Jesse's talking about something that the president just said. I've got the chat room here. The president said something the other day. He was in Puerto Rico. Okay. So a hurricane clobbers Florida last week. The president goes to Puerto Rico to talk about a country that got clobbered by a hurricane last month. That's another reason why I can't really figure out exactly what the Biden administration is doing. Now, Joe Biden there, obviously playing politics. You know, he's kissing the Hispanic the Hispanic culture. Anyway, he's there doing all of that, and he was talking about in a passionate way how he grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, 0.34% of the people living in, according to Fox News, 0.34% of the people living in Delaware are from Puerto Rico. And of course, now the White House is trying to walk back that statement. It's like clean up on aisles 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 through 4 million. Anyway, that's what Jesse was talking about. Yeah, he's really he keeps spewing about his life in Delaware, and the weirdest things happened during his childhood. It's the craziest thing. Let's move on. Let's get back to what I'm talking about here. Trying to figure out just exactly how the Biden administration is constructed. And then from there, trying to figure out what they're trying to accomplish. Now, I don't believe that Joe Biden is actually at the top of the Biden administration. I believe there is a presidium in the background, very likely President Obama, Susan Rice, Val Jarrett, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, all of these guys that we've run across that we used to call the deep state. The deep state, in my current opinion, is that it was a construct of the Biden administration. The Obama administration. The Obama administration created a rich growth environment for executive branch agencies to move into politics as opposed to their agency missions. Okay, so those people are still involved in the background, calling the shots, because they are not in the forefront of the Biden administration enough to realize what they're doing is totally out of touch with the people of the United States. Okay, they're just totally out of touch with the people of the United States. And I've got another example as to how that is. Being reported from Fox News. The Biden administration is working on a national strategy for establishing diversity, equity, and inclusion policies for the government that officials hope can be used as a template for companies and other organizations throughout the country. The Office of Personnel Management last week convened the first meeting of the Chief Diversity Officers Executive Council, a group that includes diversity officers from several federal agencies. The council will work to implement and sustain a government-wide plan for encouraging policies that support diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in government hiring and employment. However, the Office of Personnel Management also says it wants to ensure the government is, quote, our country's model of excellence, unquote, when it comes to implementing DEIA in government hiring and employment. Once again, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. In other words, woke policies for the entire government, and woke policies to suffuse throughout American corporations and companies. The council is staffed by Dr. Janice Underwood, the director of the Office of Personnel Management's Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility. The OPM said that Underwood's role on the council effectively makes her the government-wide chief diversity officer. But Underwood said the council also has an eye on influencing organizations beyond the government. This historic council, quote, this historic council will be a nexus of the most promising policies and practices from the public and private sectors alike, said Underwood. As a council, the chief diversity officers will collaborate on an approach to advancing DEIA work throughout the federal government and our society, unquote. The Office of Personnel Management said that while the council will help government diversity officers advance DEIA goals by setting up clear strategies, benchmarks, and metrics, We'll also collaborate with public and private stakeholders on DEIA policies in both the government and across other employment sectors. Underwood was the first DEIA director in the state of Virginia under Democrat Governor Ralph Northam. After Underwood was replaced by Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, she gave a 2022 interview in which she said people both inside and outside the government need to promote DEIA policies in every aspect of life. We need people who respect and affirm diversity, equity, and inclusion to run for political office at all levels. We also need people, common sense, reasonable people, and elected officials and their communication partners to speak up and not be so afraid to speak up at school board meetings, in the media, in the local town square, at the YMCA grocery store, and on the campaign trail. Oh, we got to talk about that, don't we? You bet we do. We need more people to respect and affirm diversity, equity, and inclusion to run for political office at all levels. You know, we defined equity yesterday. Bigotry is when white people discriminate against people with varying shades of brown skin. Equity is where people with varying shades of brown skin discriminate against white people. You don't use the word bigotry, even though that's exactly what it is. You don't use the word bigotry, you use equity. Equity is the justification, a word that explains discrimination against white people in the United States. Because we, white people, are the root of all evil in this otherwise great nation. That's why we have to do all of these things. Diversity, DEIA, let's see, once again, let's work through all of that. Let's get this. I should have written this down. Let's see. So funny. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. You know what this sounds like to me? This sounds like Orwellian government garbage. That's what it sounds like to me. So what we are going to do is we are going to discriminate against the vast majority of the United States, that being white folk, in an effort to make people who are not white folk the actual beneficiaries of the American government. And if she gets her way, everything having to do with American life, like all great socialist policies do. The new Soviet man, all of the things that they tried to come up with. Okay? This is communism. This is socialism. This is government control of everything. Setting aside the majority for the sake of the minority. In fact, vilifying the majority for the sake of the minority. Justifying bigoted, anti-fair or anti-equality ideology under the name of equity, which is bigotry and discrimination against white people. That's what equity is. Now, I know, and I've talked to people that have listened to this broadcast, they're going to go, what is that guy saying? What I'm saying is what everybody else is going to be saying about 2 years from now. This country is being turned into, we hate white people country. Now, people say, how will they justify it? How will they justify that entire political ideology that we just read about from the United States government? By the way, what should the United States government be trying to create amongst all of its agencies, and indeed trying to suffuse out into the companies and corporations of the United States? Should it be diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility? No. What should it be? Well, I'll tell you in just a couple of minutes. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. If you think I'm foolish, Fullish. Give me a call and tell me why. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. So the President of the United States, his entire administration, is working to essentially make woke politics not just politics, but the actual operating manual of the United States of America, pursuing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a false equality. 13% of us are African American. That's in the entire United States population. 13%. Should that be a higher number? Yeah. Why isn't it? Ask Planned Parenthood. Somewhere in the vicinity of 20% of us are Hispanic. 5% of us are LGBTQ. 6% of us LGBTQ. If these people are successful in implementing diversity, we will run out of all of these minorities long before we run out of what it takes to support a $14 trillion economy. That's per year. And it has nothing to do with what the federal government should be pursuing. Let me go back to this very same article and translate it into something American as opposed to something socialistically progressive. Shall we? I guess I'll make myself the president, okay? The Wells administration is working on a national strategy for establishing constitutional compliance for the government that officials hope can be used as a template for companies and other organizations around the country. The Office of Personnel Management last week convened the first meeting of the Chief Constitutional Officers, a group that includes constitutional officers from several federal agencies. The council will work to implement and sustain a government-wide plan for encouraging policies that support constitutional concepts and the Bill of Rights of the United States in government hiring and employment. The Office of Personnel Management wants to ensure the government is our country's model of excellence when it comes to implementing constitutional compliance. The council is staffed by John David Wells, the director of the Wells Administration Office of Constitutional Compliance. The Office of Personnel Management said that my role on the council effectively makes me the government-wide chief constitution officer, but I'll also have an eye on influencing organizations beyond the government. The Historic Council will be a nexus of the most promising policies and practices from the public and private sectors alike. As a council, the chief constitutional officers will collaborate on an approach to advancing constitutional and Bill of Rights access across the federal government and our society. Why should the government of the United States get rid of this diversity garbage in favor of promoting the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Because that's its job. The federal government only exists because of the Constitution, and it is hindered by the Bill of Rights. The job of the federal government is to not make sure that enough diversity and equity and inclusion and accessibility is in your personal business. It has nothing to do with any of it. Pay attention. They're setting you up, setting all of us up for socialistic totalitarianism. This is just a tool. You must wake. Please, you must wake. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. John David, why do you wait 10 seconds after the music starts before you say anything? You haven't asked that question yet, but I'm going to answer it before you have a chance to ask it. Well, radio stations that use this broadcast, either as a fill-in or full-time, usually have a 10-second liner where someone says, "Don't miss Billy Thomas in the morning. He'll have $10,000 in cash for you to win tomorrow." And then I come in with, "This is the Wells Report." See, so I give them time to do that. It's a highfalutin programming thing. So that being said, this is the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, not the news, my opinion, just as valuable as yours. We debate. News, analysis, commentary, debate. If this show is valuable to you, pass it along to your friends. Subscribe to it, please. Give us some likes. That way, the people that keep track of such things at Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, you'll say, "Hey, this guy has a lot of people that listen to his show and like it." And maybe what they'll do is they'll actually start putting advertisements on it, and I can start making some money with it. By the way, if you'd like to help me make money with it, you can go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. Patreon.com/The Wells Report. And you can give me $1 a month. It's just $1 a month. $2, $5, whatever you feel like. Okay? It would be wonderful. It would be absolutely wonderful. I'd appreciate it if you could. Let's get back to work. The next thing that I'm going to talk to you about is not double sourced. When I can't find a secondary source for a news article, I always say this is unconfirmed. Now, the reason that there is no other source for this particular article is because it's an exclusive from Fox News, specifically Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tucker Carlson has a broadcast that I work to see whenever I can. And the reason is it gives me an opportunity to find what I got right and what I got wrong from somebody else's point of view. It also gives me an opportunity to hear what I say this afternoon repeated on the evening newscasts on Fox News. It's fun. It's fun. You know, I've got my little scorecard. So far, I've gotten points from Tucker Carlson, just a couple, but also I've gotten points from Waters. What's his first name? I can't remember his Waters. And Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is a wide consumer of the Wells Report. He borrows stuff from me all the time. By the way, crypto is a scam. You're completely correct. Do not trust crypto. It is, hey, this is a nice looking coin and it's 20 grand. And people will buy it. Jesse Waters, thank you. Anyway, crypto, I actually have thought about doing something like this. I'm probably going to turn it over to The Onion, right? Which I'm going to be talking about here in just a couple of minutes. The Onion, they can actually do a really good job on this. I am going to start selling unobtainium. It is a material that is so rare and so sought after, it doesn't actually exist. But if you get in on the ground floor, you can buy 1 gram of unobtainium for $250,000. And people trading in these grams of unobtainium, well, they'll be able to sell their unobtainium gram for $275,000. Make 25 grand. Unobtainium. You know, people like do all this cryptocurrency like in Bitcoin. Do any of them actually possess a Bitcoin? No. Cryptocurrency is a joke. What? What's taken from Disney? Unobtainium? It is not. Unobtainium is a John David Wells exclusive. I will not get sued. That's the chat room. Let's get back to work. So once again, this is not confirmed because there is no other source, because this is an exclusive, but you need to hear about this. And this, by the way, is going to be an infuriating promotion for Tucker Carlson tonight, which you can see on Fox News beginning at 8 p.m. Yes, I do, Mike. At 8 p.m. They probably stole it from me. Anyway, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Tucker Carlson tonight, Fox News. To wit, Tony Bobulinski is a former business associate of Hunter Biden. In one of the shell companies that Hunter Biden was a part of, Tony Bobulinski was the actual CEO. He was deep inside, purportedly, deep inside the Biden family business. He is a former business associate of Hunter Biden. Tonight, he's going to discuss what he believes Joe Biden and Joe Biden's role in the business dealings of Hunter Biden. Tony Bobulinski believes that President Joe Biden essentially served as the chairman and a figurehead to his son's overseas business dealings. Bobulinski is a retired lieutenant in the U.S. Navy. He's a former CEO of Sinohawk Holdings, which he has long said was a partnership between a Chinese energy firm and the Biden family. During an exclusive interview that will air tonight on Tucker Carlson tonight, Bobulinski said he met with President Biden multiple times prior to the 2020 election to discuss his son's business ventures. There are hundreds of data points that Joe Biden was acting in a capitalistic term, I would say the chairman, Bobulinski told Tucker Carlson. The chairman of JP Morgan does not take 8 meetings down with people, analyzing companies. The chairman serves a purpose, right? He's a figurehead. He shows up in meetings, shake hands, advises, has faith in his team. Effectively, that was Joe Biden's role in the Biden family business ventures and around the world. And not just my venture, Sinohawk Holdings. Fox News' Mike Emanuel previously reported that Hunter once made a reference to my chairman gave an emphatic no in a text message. A source familiar told Emanuel that when Hunter Biden talked about his chairman, he was referring to his father. Anonymous sources, we don't like anonymous sources. Here on the Wells Report, we always point out that this is an anonymous source. We also point out in this particular circumstance is that someone said something that the chairman was Joe Biden. Too thin to take seriously at this point. This is interesting, I guess. If you're trying to find dirt on Joe Biden, I guess this is interesting, but can you prove any of this? We'll see. Bobulinski said that Joe Biden had been playing that role dating back decades. This in a leaked 2018. He said a leaked 2018 voicemail in which he told his son, quote, "I think you're clear," unquote, following a New York Times report about Hunter's work with a Chinese corporation, contradict the sitting president's claims. Quote, Joe Biden was adamant to the American people he had no knowledge of his family's business dealings. How, if he had zero knowledge of that, could he be telling his son that he's in the clear on a particular article regarding his business dealings, unquote? Well, I can answer that question because the President of the United States picked up the telephone and said, spike the rest of the story. And they played ball. That's how he could do it with no knowledge, just in case you're wondering. I understand the logical sequence of that thought. Bobulinski is putting out a reasonable idea. But once again, remember just exactly how this concept of plausible deniability works. So Bobulinski is saying, well, the President of the United States goes and shakes hands, advises, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but it doesn't really get into the nuts and bolts. Is he violating the law? Maybe not. Is Nancy Pelosi violating the law when she muses about, say, for example, a bill that will create an opportunity for American chip manufacturers to finally be able to compete on a fair playing field with China, who's sending us counterfeit and indeed chips that have backdoors so that they can access anything they're in? And does Mr. Pelosi then go invest in chip manufacturers? Is that breaking the law? Is there a smoking gun when somebody comes up with an actual law that forbids dealing in any kind of stock transaction, not just the actual person in a political office, but their families and their relatives? They cannot participate in that stuff. To spiking that bill, which is what Nancy Pelosi did. It's the Stock Act. That's what she did last week. Is that a smoking gun? We don't know, do we? So, how, if he had zero knowledge of what was going on with this newspaper article and so on and so forth, talking about a natural gas deal, I think you're clear. How can he be telling his son he's clear on the article? Well, because what he did was he called, I think it was Washington Post, or maybe the New York Times, and said spike the story, and they did it. Bobulinski has accused Hunter Biden of fraud against his business partners by tampering with key documents to funnel over $5 million into a company he owned during the latest sit-down with Carlson. Bobulinski, who previously spoke to Carlson in 2020, insists the Biden family has aggressively leveraged his famous last name to make millions from foreign entities. He initially said he wouldn't have gone public with the story had the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff's comments saying his claims were part of a Russian disinformation campaign if those comments had been retracted. Because remember something, Bobulinski, I believe, is in the Navy Reserves and has a security clearance. If he's playing handsy-footsies with Russians, his security clearance goes away, along with his naval career. He is speaking out once again, this time after he feels the FBI have not properly handled his claims. The FBI is not going to do anything unless it has something to do with getting Donald Trump arrested on a federal indictment. The FBI no longer exists. The FBI that you know about and that I know about, okay, in my humble opinion, no longer exists. The FBI is a political action committee. Nothing more. Nothing more. And we know. Because they take political action. Just like Peter Strzok said they would. Oh, no, he's not going to be the president. We have an insurance policy. What is it? The grotesque misappropriation of American law to chase our political enemies down, shackle them in airports, drag them off into an office when all they really had to do was pick up the phone and said, hey, can you come to the office? Right. Arthur Davenport is a Democrat. He's a friend of mine. We went to high school together. Man, he's old. Anyway, he says, this Bobulinski guy sounds like a disgruntled employee. Yeah, he does. That's why I'm saying this is unconfirmed. All this is unconfirmed. So why am I reporting it? Why am I reporting it if it's all unconfirmed? Well, I'm going to tell you. Because President Donald Trump was impeached twice. He has been hounded by the federal government since his disappearance from the Oval Office as President of the United States. Not just on the federal level, but on the state level as well. This guy's been under investigation by the IRS for at least 20 years that I'm aware of. And they haven't found a thing. They can't. Perfect example of this is the Attorney General of New York can't prove a criminal case, so she's going after Donald Trump in civil court. She's not going to win there either. Because this is why presidents and former presidents really have a lot of protection from the grotesque misuse of law, oppression under color of office, because of this exact reason. But Donald Trump is such a threat to the American left that they will do anything, including expose themselves as anti-American fascist thugs, in order to somehow compromise him in the thoughts of the American people. Arthur says, no, I'm not a Democrat. I've shared that fact numerous times. Who'd you vote for in 2020? Who? This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. If you're on the chat room, I'm having a great time with Arthur Davenport. He's the guy. We're high school buddies, man. You know. Anyway, back to business. So, what you may not know about me is I grew up in North Carolina. I met Arthur when we both lived in Barstow, California. I graduated from Barstow High School. At the time, we were the only we were the only high school in America that had the mascot Riffian. We were Riffians. Okay. Anyway, so I grew up in North Carolina, in the mountains, in fact, and bluegrass and the arts and all of the things that were such a part of our lives, suffused everything we touched, included a woman named Loretta Lynn. Loretta Lynn was a country music superstar, perhaps the biggest ever. And I will tell you that there were times in our family, we didn't do it every week, but the Grand Ole Opry out of Nashville, Tennessee, Grand Ole Opry, country music, it was one of the very first really good variety shows. Featured Loretta Lynn and all of her contemporaries, week after week after week. And she always had a story, and she always did such a great job because she was not just a great singer, but she was a great musician, and she was a great human being. And all of those things came together in this country music career. And you can listen to any one of her songs, and you can see every single bit of that coming together. She's telling you something. She's telling you something about how she grew up or where she was born or what she's learned in her life. She's telling you something you need to know. And she does it in a way that is, okay, it's country music, and people go, country music, especially back then, it was kind of twangy. You know, it's like it's one of the jokes I used to tell. You know, how does a country music artist, and this was back in the 60s and early 70s, how does a country music artist start any of his letters? Dear, 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 dear. Anyway, she made her home in a ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, just outside Nashville. And she passed away today. She was 90. The family wrote this letter. It was, quote, our precious mom, Loretta Lynn, passed away peacefully this morning in her sleep at home at her beloved ranch. She was a mother of four when she launched her career in the early 60s. Though many of her songs filled with specifics of her wholly unique life, they had universal appeal. She wrote about intimate matters, from her difficult, wearying childhood to fights with her husband. And she always struck a nerve. She had something to tell you. Without ever mentioning politics or women's liberation, her 1960s and 70s hits helped change long-held notions about gender roles. Rated X, Don't Come Home a Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind, were personal pleas. Not about politics, but they did seek to end double standards. Loretta Lynn did that at a time where women were most often the voices through which men's words and melodies were heard. She was Nashville's first prominent woman to write and record her own material, and was one of the first female music stars to generate her own hits. When she was set to receive her Kennedy Center honor in 2003, Lynn told the Nashville Tennessean, part of the USA Today network, she wasn't sure why people found her culture-shaking song so remarkable. Cultural contribution? What's that? I was just saying it like I was living it. People go around that, but I went right through the middle of it. She was the first woman named Entertainer of the Year at the genre's two major awards shows, first by the Country Music Association in 1972, and then the Academy of Country Music 3 years later. Loretta Lynn told the story of her upbringing, which helped her reach her widest honor audience yet with something called Coal Miner's Daughter in 1970. And we lost her today. There will be others. An entire generation of storytellers are getting ready to leave us. And they left us a much richer, much better informed society. And they also left us people like Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks is of this kind of stature. He tells these stories. Go see him if you can. This has been the Wells Report. Loretta Lynn, gone at 90. Thanks for joining us today. R.I.P. Loretta Lynn. All right, then. So there you go. Another one in the can. All right. All right, guys. God bless all y'all. Take good care. And I will see you tomorrow for another edition of this fine radio broadcast. It's not a radio broadcast, it's a podcast now, but I'm doing everything I can. You know, if I get through the next 10 years, I might catch on. Cross your fingies. All right, like my wife says, be safe.